Hello, everybody. All right, I've got an awesome blues lesson I want you to catch. We're going to talk about rhythm and comping, but anything that we do rhythmically, and I don't mean like the actual rhythm, but like rhythm guitar really can be taken into lead. So I'm going to show you how to like visualize some of these rhythm and comping ideas on the fretboard, and then be able to take that into lead. So you don't feel like you're just learning, sort of comping and rhythm guitar, even though I do think that is very important. I know a lot of people, when it comes to blues lessons, want to get into some lead stuff as well. So, really, really cool thing about the blues, about our standard 12-bar blues, let's just put it that way, is we're operating within 3 different keys, right? 1 key for each one of the chords, the 1, the 4, and the 5, 1, 7, 4, 7, 5, 7. And then there's like this overlaying melodic pentatonic with a couple of added notes, if we'd like to, blues scale with a couple of added notes that sort of lay over top of it. It's really cool. There's not a lot of other genres of music that will take a chord. I mean, that 7 chord, if I have my A7 and I go to my 4 chord, I mean, it wants to resolve to that D, right? But it doesn't. When it goes to the 4 chord, it's another 7, breaks out of the original 1 dominant to the 4 dominant, breaks out of that key, right? And back again. So there's a lot of things that we can do within each one of those chords, right? Just because they are based around mixolydian, so to speak. They're all dominant chords, right? There's only 1 dominant chord within any particular key signature, right? If we're sort of talking, whatever normal key signature, normal sort of 7-tone, anything based off of the major scale, essentially. There is only 1 dominant chord, and that's the 5th, right? And it's really cool that we have a progression that solely uses the dominant chord and moves it around. Anyway, that being said, first thing I want to get into is this tritone. I love this. All right, we can move it around. This is where the rhythmic idea sort of starts to form, right? So not just the rhythm guitar idea of what this hand is doing chordally rather than lead, but some actual rhythmic ideas. Look, if I take this, right? If I have my A7, got my tritone right there, my flat 7 and my 3, right, of that chord. That becomes my tritone for my A7, right? Those 2. Now, when I go to my 4 chord, my D, that tritone just goes down a half step, all right, for my D. Now, where the 7 was, the flat 7 was, and the 3, they sort of switch roles here, where now this is the 3 and this is the flat 7 for my 4 chord, right? And then back up again, switch fingers there. So same thing for my 5 chord, right? My tritone there, my 3, my flat 7 for my 5 chord. Back again. What I really like about that is we're talking about the blues, and I mean a lot of genres, but the blues especially. We're probably going to be getting that root note in the bass on the 1, on the strong beats, right? We don't really need to worry about that too much. So a really cool trick. And we can move it around the neck depending on sort of I want to say the genre of blues. What I mean by that is we can get into some funk stuff, we can get into a little bit more of the jazzy side, whether we want it to be darker or lighter, we can move that tritone around, right? So if I had something that was a little bit on the darker side, I'd play it lower, lower on the guitar, and I'd probably take this, right? And I can... There's my 4 chord. I'm just moving that tritone down, back to my 1 chord. 5 chord, 4 chord, 1 chord. So I played the full 12-bar blues without touching the root note. And I'm just playing that tritone, and that's this. That for my 1 chord, slide it down a half step for my 4 chord, right? Slide it back up for my 1 chord, slide it up for my 5. So now that would be something to do, especially if there was like a little bit larger of an ensemble and you're just trying to play into what the ensemble was doing, right? If there was an organ that was taking care of probably some extensions, you know, some 13s and some 9s up there, that's a great way to sort of fit in, cutting through a little bit because that tritone's going to cut, right? But we're not overstepping anybody else's sonic area, you know what I mean? Especially if we want to, right? We can get the sharper you cut those accents too. Right, we're not really going to be stepping on a lot of toes. That's all subjective, you know, however it is that you would like to do that. I love that idea. Now, this is really cool. I could take that to other tritones, basically. If I were still in A, you know, and we're going to take this, I love this. So if I take my D7, right, and I move it up to what would be an A7. So my A would be here, right, 9 on the G string, 9, 10, 9. So to make it a 7, 9, 8, 9, right? That's my A7 without a root note, okay? If I wanted to, I could put the 7th fret of the D string there and play that. Would be like my full, with my D string, my full D7 coming up to an A7, right? I don't need my root note, and I don't need my 5th. There's my tritone again. Same rules apply, okay? 1 chord, down to the 4, down a half step to the 4, back up to the 1, up a half step to the 5, down to the 4, and the 1. Now that is the same tritone. We're now right here I have my flat 7 and my 3, right? Just like down here I have my flat 7 and my 3, right? And then when I moved it down, that became my 3 and my flat 7 for my 4 chord. Same thing here. Flat 7 and 3 for my 1 chord, my A. There's my D7, right there. I'm taking that. Now that's the flat 7 and the 3. Move it back up. 3, flat 7. Same with this E when I get to my E, my 5 chord. It's my E7, D7, and then A7. But if I want to switch those, the rules still apply. What I mean by switching that is I had my flat 7, my G of my A chord, my A7. Flat 7 was on the B string, and then my 3 was on the E string. Even if I flip those around, I can do this. Regular old, you know, A7 sort of in this position. You know, just an A chord with a 3rd fret on that bottom E string, that high E string. Now it's my 3, and that's my flat 7, my tritone, my A7. So I can do, bring it down a half step for the 4 chord, the D chord. Boom, there's my D7, flat 7, 3. Move it up to my A, flat 7, 3. Right, up a half step to the 5 chord. Sort of end on that 5. So wherever you play your A7 and you get that tritone, right, down a half step implies the 4 chord, up a half step implies the 5 chord. So really, really cool. Now, if I want to take that, let's just say I do want to play the root note. I want to add a little bit more to that, all right? I don't want to be quite as sparse. You know, I like it up here if it's something that's got like a little bit more of a backbeat, or a little bit more funk to it. Right, we can sort of punch those in, almost like a horn section, playing something funky, like a Tower of Power, almost like just kind of hitting those real syncopated hits. You know, that tritone is great for that sound. Now, if I want to get a little bit on the darker side, and I want to add the shuffle, and what I really mean by this shuffle is getting that 6 in there, that natural 6 or the natural 13, I guess, since we are dealing with dominant. And just the regular shuffle, you know, is like a power chord, you know, root note and 5th, maybe, so up to the 6th, maybe up to the flat 7 and back down again, right? And I can mimic that without having to, right, give that kind of feel. And that's the same idea. I'm taking my root note, my flat 7 and my 3 of my 1 chord, right? In this instance, it's A, right? I'm just not playing that 5th. I'm going right for the notes that count, okay? Now, my flat 7 is where my middle finger is. To get to that natural 6, I bring it down a half step and then back up again. If I go to my 4 chord, now this is my flat 7. Bring it down a half step by barring with my first finger. Right, and then back up again. To the 5 chord. Now, what is really cool about that is wherever that flat 7 is, down a half step to the 6 with the 13, and then we can go up a whole step to the octave. Right, and however you rhythmically want to play it. I really like that sound. I think that kind of comes across. It has a little bit more movement to it, right? If we're just sitting, usually if we're just sort of sitting on, right, it means something else is doing the movement, like, right, a walking bass line or something like that. Something in the organ is adding the movement, but we don't need to, and this will sort of give us that movement. That being said, we can lead in using that tritone, okay? The same idea from before. We're taking the almost the original idea now. If I have this, right, and I know if I bring it down a half step, that'll get to my 4 chord. So I can go to the tritone root note down. I would do that on the 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Same. I can lead back 4 into that. Same, oops, fumbled there, but now to the 5, down to the 4, 1, right, something cool to play with. Now you can take that idea and add, right, however you want to like sort of lead in when you'd like to lead in, not lead in, if you want to, add those little embellishments too. So that's like how we can really take, a regular blues standard and not just play the same old thing, which I always think is really important. How we start to take this into our lead guitar is we start adding those notes that we're seeing right here. Right, right, adding that little flat 7 in the pentatonic, go down a half step, right, maybe add that major third if I like that sound, right, and then same when I get to some of the other notes. What I really do like about adding some of those other note embellishments is like, right, getting that major third for that 1 chord and really hitting the minor third. That minor third is the flat 7 for my 4 chord, right? And then I love how a lot of things change when we get to that 5. I mean, we're really getting somewhere different. If you can add, there's some really cool things. You can add a Dorian, a whole step above the A, right? When I get to that 5 chord, right? Get that Dorian in there. That sort of implies this 5 chord, right? Kind of gives us, you can even do it without the extension. So almost, right? Almost all 7s and 9s might be pretty cool because you're hitting, really embellishing that, right? And then this is a 13. It's my flat 7. Right, all over that 5 chord. So there's a little, some fun things that you can do. Lastly, when you're doing these too, I want to throw this in there, but right, if I go to also getting that, right? Adding that fifth lower. So if I'm on my D here, right, and I jump this up and play the A, so I'm playing like my third, my flat 7 of my 4 chord, but I'm putting that in the bass, I'm putting the 5th in the bass, right? Especially effective when we get to that 5 chord. That gives us that 9 in the key of A, right? And that just sort of, ooh, that's something like a little bit different, right? Some cool ideas, right? Just to sort of not have all of these blues lessons just be so like, you know, sort of the same licks over and over and over and over. I want to give a little bit of a different perspective there. Cool. If you like the lesson, let me know. Any questions, always reach out.